This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. From Cameroon, kidnapped local administrator in Northwest region regains freedom. From Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu rejects Hamas's proposed ceasefire terms. From Pakistan, multiple bomb explosions ahead of elections kill 28 people. From Belgium, U.S. NATO cautions Hungary against delaying Sweden's membership. From United States, official in charge of diplomatic security arrested for capital attacks. From Australia, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister addresses Parliament in Canberra. In details. A local administrator who was kidnapped by suspected separatists in Cameroon's conflict hit Northwest region has regained his freedom, the regional governor has said. Nicholas Nkongho Manchang and his aides were ambushed on Tuesday in a village in Undu as they headed for the installation ceremony of another senior administrator. Governor Adolphe Lafrique said on Wednesday that the government official was freed in a swift military operation ordered by President Paul Biya. But in a video making the rounds on social media, Mr. Nkongho can be heard saying he escaped captivity and trekked for several hours. The other members of his convoy are still being held captive. Cameroon's two Anglophone regions, the Northwest and Southwest, have been mired in conflict since 2017 as fighting continues between government forces and separatists seeking a breakaway state. Kidnapping of government officials and civilians by separatists is common, with riot groups also faulting Cameroon security forces for human rights abuses. Two multinational companies, Trafigura from Singapore and Ivanhoe Mines from Canada, have signed a major deal to export copper along a railway from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The corridor to Angolan port of Lobito has been part funded by the United States to try to compete with China for access to minerals. The colonial-era railway reopened in 2015 after closing during Angola's civil war, but traffic has struggled to take off. Global demand for copper is growing as it is vital for the manufacture of solar panels and electronics. A man awaiting extradition in Massachusetts, warrants alleging he killed his girlfriend and left her body in a car at a Boston airport, escaped from police custody in Kenya, police said Thursday. Kevin Adam Kinyanjui Kangethe slipped out of the police station and jumped into a privately owned minivan, Nairobi Police Chief Adamson Bungay said. A fresh search for him began immediately. 4 police officers who were on duty at the station are in custody and have recorded statements, according to a police report seen by the press. The officers said that around 4 p.m. on Wednesday, a man named John Minor Ndegwa introduced himself to the officers as Kangeth's lawyer and said he wanted to speak with his client. The officers agreed to his request and removed the prisoner from the cells and took him to an office, leaving them there. After a short while, the prisoner escaped by running away and left the lawyer behind, the report said. Officers pursued Kangete but did not catch him, the police report said, adding that Ndegwa was arrested. Nairobi Police Chief Adamson Bungay said he rushed to the station when he learned of the escape. We have arrested the officers who were on duty when he escaped to explain how it happened. It is just embarrassing to us, he said. Kangate, 40, had been detained pending a ruling on whether he should be extradited to face a first-degree murder charge in connection with the death of Margaret Mbitu on October 31, 2023. Zimbabwe's cabinet has agreed to back a move in parliament to abolish the death penalty, a punishment that was last used in the Southern African nation nearly 20 years ago. Zimbabwe used hanging as its means of execution, but it hasn't hanged anyone since 2005, partly because no one had been willing to take up the job of state executioner or hangman for years. In 2022, Zimbabwe's Sunday Mail newspaper reported that several police did apply for the role, including 2 women. No one was hired. Zimbabwe is one of more than a dozen citizens in countries in Africa and more than 50 across the world that have the death penalty enshrined in law without any moratorium on it. The cabinet's decision to support a change to the law that was made at meeting on Tuesday, and as a key step, it still needs to be passed by Parliament. In view of the need to retain the deterrent elements in sentencing murderers, it is expected that the new law will impose lengthy sentences without violating the right to life, Information Minister Jen Van Muswere said. It appears the move will have cross-party support, with opposition lawmaker Edwin Moshirwa saying Wednesday that he would also support an abolishment. President Emerson Mnangagwa, who won re-election for his second term in August, has repeatedly expressed his opposition to the death penalty, citing his own personal experience when he was sentenced to death in the 1960s for blowing up a train during Zimbabwe's independence war, when the country was called Rhodesia and under white minority rule. His sentence was changed to 10 years in prison. Zimbabwe's constitution says the death penalty only applies to men between the ages of 21 and 70 who are convicted of murder committed in aggravating circumstances, such as killing a pregnant woman or a child. Madagascar should abolish a new law which allows for the chemical and surgical castration of people convicted of raping minors, as it was cruel, inhumane, and degrading, rights group Amnesty International has said. Last month, President Andry Rajoelina proposed the amendments to the penal code that include chemical and surgical castration as punishment for individuals found guilty of rape against minors. These changes have since been agreed by MPs. In a statement, Tigere Chaguta, Amnesty's regional director for East and Southern Africa, said in Madagascar, rape cases remain underreported and perpetrators often go free due to the victims and their families' fear of retaliation, stigmatization, and lack of trust in the judicial system. Implementing chemical and surgical castration, which constitutes cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment as punishment for those found guilty of raping minors, will not solve this and is inconsistent with Malagasy constitutional provisions against torture and other ill treatments, as well as regional and international human rights standards. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected Hamas's proposed ceasefire attempts, saying total victory in Gaza is possible within months. He was speaking after Hamas laid out a series of demands in response to an Israel-backed ceasefire proposal. Mr. Netanyahu said negotiations with the group were not going anywhere and described their attempts as bizarre. Talks are continuing to try to reach some sort of deal. There is no other solution but a complete and final victory, Mr. Netanyahu told a news conference on Wednesday. If Hamas will survive in Gaza, it is only a question of time until the next massacre. Israel was expected to take issue with Hamas's counteroffer, but this response is a categorical rebuke, and Israeli officials clearly see an effort by Hamas to end the war on its terms as utterly unacceptable. Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuri told the media that Mr. Netanyahu's remarks are a form of political bravado and show he intends to pursue the conflict in the region. A senior commander of an Iran-backed militia has been killed in a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad. A leader of Kataib Hezbollah and 2 of his guards were in a vehicle when it was targeted in the east of Iraqi capital. All 3 of them died. The Pentagon said the commander was responsible for directing attacks on American forces in the region. The U.S. has linked the militia to a drone attack in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. troops last month. In the wake of that attack, Kataib Hezbollah said it was suspending attacks on American troops to prevent embarrassment to the Iraqi government. Wednesday night's drones raid happened in Baghdad's Mash Town neighborhood, sparking several loud explosions. It was a precise strike on a moving vehicle in a busy street, and the car was reduced to a fiery wreck. One of the victims has been identified as Abu Bagir al-Sadi, a senior commander in Kataib Hezbollah. U.S. Central Command said the attack at 21:30 local time had killed the commander responsible for directly planning and participating in attacks on U.S. forces in the region. There are no indications of collateral damage or civilian casualties at this time, the CENTCOM statement said. When a press team reached the scene, crowds of protesters gathered chanting, "America is the biggest devil." There was a heavy police presence joined by SWAT teams from Iraq's Interior Ministry. Two bomb explosions near a candidate's office in the Pakistani province of Balochistan killed at least 28 people and wounded dozens on the eve of general elections, officials said. The first blast killed 16 people in Pishin district north of Qatar city. The second explosion left 12 people dead in Killa, Saifullah to the east. The Islamic State group said it was responsible for both attacks. The vote has been marred by violence and claims of Paul Regan. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan is banned from standing jailed on corruption charges he claims are politically motivated. IS said both of Wednesday's bombings were carried out using motorbikes rigged with explosives. Resource-rich Balochistan, Pakistan's largest and poorest province, has a history of violence. It has seen a decades-long struggle for greater autonomy by various groups, some of them armed. Islamic militants, including the Pakistani Taliban, operate along the border with Afghanistan. The bomb in Pishin, a town around 100 kilometers east of the Afghan border, went off in front of Independence Candidate Party office. The provincial authorities also said 25 people were wounded. Images on social media showed cars and motorbikes blown apart by the force of the explosion. Officials told the press the candidate was meeting his polling agent at the time. The second blast targeted the election office of the JUIF party. A senior police official told media agency it took place in the main bazaar of Kila Saifullah, about 190 kilometers east of Qatar. 20 people were wounded in the incident and the number of casualties in the two attacks could rise, officials said. Pakistan has temporarily suspended mobile services as millions head to the polls to vote in a new government. An Interior Ministry spokesman said the measure was warranted, citing recent incidents of terror in the country. The election comes almost 2 years since the previous Prime Minister, cricketer turned politician Imran Khan, was ousted in a no-confidence vote. Three-time Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is now on the ballot in what many analysts say is Pakistan's least credible election yet. Both calls and data services have been suspended, though Wi-Fi networks still appear to be working. One voter told the press they were shocked at the decision, saying voters should be facilitated instead of having to be met with such hurdles. Another said she was expecting a blanket shutdown. Justifying the move, an Interior Ministry spokesman said, as a result of the recent incidents of terrorism in the country, precious lives have been lost. Security measures are essential to maintain law and order situation and to deal with potential threats. It comes as two bomb blasts killed 28 people in the restive Balochistan province on Wednesday. The country is therefore on high alert with heavy security presence at polling stations across the country. One station in Lahore had armed guards at the entrance and army officers roaming around the area. Spy camera footage of South Korea's First Lady accepting a luxury bag gift was leaked as a political maneuver, President Yoon Suk-yeol said. Mr. Yoon said the act was regrettable but stopped short of apologizing. He has been under pressure to address the issue, which has roiled his ruling party ahead of key elections in April. His first comment on what local media has called the Dior bag scandal disappointed citizens and angered the opposition. Late last year, left-wing YouTube channel Voice of Seoul published a video that purportedly showed First Lady Kim Hyung-hee accepting a 3 million won Dior bag from a pastor who filmed the exchange in September 2022 using a camera concealed in his watch. The video was made public at a time when the general election is drawing near, a year after the issue happened, so we can see this is a political maneuver, Mr. Yoon told press. The fact that she was unable to cold-heartedly reject him was the problem, if one can call it a problem, and it is a little regrettable, Mr. Yoon said. Some analysts have said the scandal threatens the prospects of Mr. Yoon's Conservative People Power Party in April's legislative elections. The video was released as his approval ratings were beginning to recover. The opposition Democratic Party said Mr. Yoon fell short of the public's expectation of a sincere apology. The president's shameless attitude is hopeless, the party's spokesman, Kwon Chiu-seong, said. It is hard to say how long we will continue to watch the self-righteousness of a president who refuses to admit fault and apologize to the people, Mr. Kwon said. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that he and his NATO counterparts cautioned Hungary on Wednesday against further delay in Sweden's membership in the military alliance, and he warned that patience in Washington has its limits. Lawmakers from the party of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban boycotted an emergency session of Parliament on Monday, where a vote was scheduled to place Sweden's bid to join NATO on the legislative agenda, adding to 18 months of delays that have angered Hungary's allies. The governing Fidesz party, which holds an absolute majority in Hungary's parliament, has stalled Sweden's bid since July 2022, alleging that Swedish politicians have told blatant lies about the state of Hungarian democracy. The party insists that Sweden's prime minister must come to Hungary first. We heard security advisor after security advisors say that it is past time for Sweden to get in and to directly address the representative from Hungary. Sullivan told reporters after a meeting of the organization's top security officials at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Sullivan said that he and his colleagues had impressed upon Hungary that it is a matter of credibility and the obligation that they take necessary steps to complete the parliamentary procedures to ratify Sweden's accession. Sweden, along with neighboring Finland, set aside decades of military non-alignment to seek protection under NATO's collective security umbrella after Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 4, 2022. Finland has since joined the Transatlantic Alliance. The country, along with 30 other allies, must all agree that Sweden should stand among NATO's ranks. Hungary is the only member standing in its way. Sullivan said that he wouldn't stand here today and make particular threats or speculations about steps that we force our patience on this can't be unlimited either. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been interviewed by former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. The Kremlin confirmed Wednesday it is Putin's first interview to a Western media figure since his full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. Carlson had released a video from Moscow on Tuesday in which he said he would be interviewing Putin. Carlson claimed that Western journalists had interviewed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky multiple times. According to Justin Wells, head of programming at Carlson's streaming network, it is not known what was said in the interview. Putin has heavily limited his contact with international media since he launched the war in Ukraine in February 2022. Russian authorities have cracked down on media, forcing some independent Russian outlets to close blocking orders and ordering a number of foreign reporters to leave the country. Two journalists working for U.S. news organizations, the Wall Street Journal's Evan Yashkovich and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty Alstu Kumasheva, are in jail on charges they reject. Russia fired cruise and ballistic missiles and Shahed-type drones at 6 regions across Ukraine on Wednesday morning, authorities reported, killing at least 5 civilians and wounding almost 50 others, including a pregnant woman. The attacks hit at least 3 major cities, including the capital Kyiv, where the European Union's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, was discussing military aid and financial support for Ukraine. He said that he started his day in an air raid shelter, calling it part of Ukraine's daily reality after almost 2 years of the war. The West's help is desperately needed by Ukraine, which is struggling with ammunition and personnel shortages. Some long-term foreign funding is also in doubt as the latest effort to clinch a deal on Ukraine aid in the U.S. Senate collapsed Tuesday. Though the roughly 1,500-kilometer front line has barely budged in recent months, the Kremlin's forces have the upper hand in stocks of missiles and artillery ammunition used for long-range strikes. Russia has repeatedly used missiles to blast civilian targets during the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said last month that air defense and electronic warfare systems that can stop drones are Kyiv's top priority. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine said Wednesday that civilian casualties in the war have begun mounting again after falling last year. Last month, it documented 158 civilian deaths and 483 wounded, up from 37% from last November. So far, the conflict has killed more than 10,000 civilians and wounded nearly 20,000 others, the UN said. Borrell visited a drone production facility in Ukraine, where he said 1,500 small drones are produced daily. Ukraine's armed forces said they intercepted 44 Russian drones and missiles out of 64 that were launched in the morning attack. The longest surviving heart transplant patient has been recognized by Guinness World Records. Bert Jansen, 57, from the Netherlands, has survived almost 40 years with a donor heart he received at Harefield Hospital in Uxbridge, northwest London, in the 1980s. He was treated for cardiomyopathy, which affects the heart's ability to pump blood around the body. He said he was still grateful for the incredible gift his donor gave him. Mr. Jansen was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy after he developed flu-like symptoms when he was 17. His cardiologist in his home country had ties with Harefield Hospital and transplant pioneer Professor Sir Magdi Yacoub, who carried out the operation on 6 June 1984. The procedure had not been carried out on the Netherlands at the time. Mr. Jansen, who was 18 when he had the operation, said it all went very fast. Only a week after arriving at Harefield, 2 hearts became available from a major car accident in London. I had a match with one of these and the heart was transplanted. The prime suspect in the disappearance of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann in Portugal in 2007 is expected to stay largely silent at his forthcoming trial in Germany for unrelated sexual offences, according to his lawyer. Christian Bruckner is due in court on 16th February, accused of 5 offences between 2000 and 2017 in Portugal. He is already serving a jail sentence for rape. Bruckner has never been charged with Madeleine McCann's disappearance. He has denied any involvement. 3-year-old Madeleine from Rotherley in Leicestershire was on holiday with her family at the Ocean Club in Praia de Luz in Portugal's Algarve when she disappeared on 3rd of May 2007. Her whereabouts remain unknown. Bruckner, a German national, was made a formal suspect by Portuguese prosecutors in 2022. He had already been identified as a suspect by German prosecutors in 2020, named at the time as only Christian B. Bruckner's lawyer told the media that he did not expect his client to make substantive submissions during the upcoming trial in Brunswick, the Lower Saxony, which could last for months. We will see whether the defendant will defend himself in silence or make statements denying individual acts, said Frederick Fulcher, a public defender. At the moment, I do not assume that there will be any substantive submissions. Bruckner's lawyer said that no negative conclusions could be drawn from this. Whether a defendant declares, I have nothing to do with it, I am innocent, or the like, or whether he uses his right to remain silent, leads to the same result in criminal proceedings, said Mr. Fulcher. But this does not mean that there is something to hide, but is simply due to the fact that it makes sense from a procedural point of view. Bruckner would still be expected to confirm biographical details, such as his name and date of birth. Brunswick's chief prosecutor has charged Bruckner with 5 offences alleged to have been carried out between 2000 and 2017 in Portugal, including the rape and sexual abuse of children. French prosecutors have opened a preliminary investigation after actress Judith Grotches filed a complaint against film director Benoit Jacquot, accusing him of historical rape. Ms. Grotches, 51, accuses Mr. Jacquot, 77, of raping her when she was 14 in 1986 and of subsequent offences in a relationship lasting into the 1990s. The complaint was lodged on Tuesday, her lawyer told press. Mr. Jacquot has said he firmly denies her allegations and accusations. In the early part of her career, Ms. Grotches was known for her roles in 2 films made by the director, The Beggars 1987 and The Disenchanted 1990. She had recently evoked her relationship with Benoit Jacquot without referring to him by name in an autobiographical TV show called Icon of French Cinema. Last month, she named him on social media, saying she had decided to do so after viewing a documentary from 2011 in which the director had talked about his relationship with an adolescent. Interviewed by pressmen, Mr. Jacquot said he firmly denies the allegations and accusations of Judith Grotches. Contacted by media on Wednesday, he let it be known that he stood by his words in the newspaper and did not wish to react any further. Ms. Grotches' complaint was lodged with the Juvenile Protection Brigade in Paris, her lawyer Laura Kennech told the press. Judith Grotches has made numerous films, of which The Overnight 2015, The Spanish Apartment 2002, and The Man in the Iron Mask 1998 are some of the best known. Benoit Jacquard has been directing films since the mid-1970s, with his 2012 drama Farewell, My Queen opening the 62nd annual Berlin International Film Festival. An exhibition of Palestinian art has opened its doors at the P21 Gallery in central London. It comes at a divisive time in the art world. Several venues in Europe and North America have cancelled exhibitions and events with Palestinian and pro-Palestine artists, mostly due to comments made over the Israel-Gaza war, and in Istanbul, works of Israeli artists were removed from an exhibition to avoid protests from the public. From Palestine with Art was already showcased at the 2022 Venice Biennale, but the organizers say given the current climate, they feel the need to bring it back into the spotlight. We are trying to protect the true image of Palestinians. We are people who like peace. We are humans, says curator and director of Palestine Museum US, Faisal Saleh. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing. You human trafficker.
Honorable they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what the blood.
I have fought very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-the-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Welcome back. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now to the rest of our stories. A former civilian member of Canada's National Police Force has been sentenced to 14 years in prison for leaking intelligence to suspected criminals. Prosecutors argued that Cameron Ortiz, 51, shared government secrets with organized crime figures. Ortiz has denied this and said he was working secretly to prevent a grave threat to Canada. He was convicted in November at an Ottawa court after an 8-week trial. Judge Robert Maranga said on Wednesday that the sentence takes into account time Ortiz has already spent behind bars, and he will ultimately serve 7 more years. The case marked the first time that Canada's current espionage law was tested in trial. The U.S. Supreme Court will wade into uncharted legal waters on Thursday as it considers if Donald Trump should be barred from running for president. The justices will weigh if Colorado can strike Mr. Trump off its ballot after finding he engaged in insurrection over the U.S. Capitol riot. Their decision will also determine if similar bids to keep Mr. Trump off the ballot in other states are valid. He is the definitive frontrunner to be the Republican Party candidate. Unless the justices rule against Mr. Trump, he looks likely to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden in November. It is the most consequential such case to reach the court since it halted in Florida vote recount in 2000, handing the White House to Republican George Washington Bush over Democrat Al Gore. Challenge has been expedited by the U.S. Supreme Court, and there is pressure for a decision before 5th March. When voters in 15 states, including Colorado, cast their ballots in Republican primaries, Mr. Trump's name so far remains on the Colorado ballots pending the court's ruling. Maine also has excluded Mr. Trump from its ballot, a decision on hold too while the judges considered the matter. The legal challenge hinges on a Civil War-era constitutional amendment that bans anyone who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding federal office. Self-help writer Marianne Williamson has suspended her bid to stand as the U.S. Democrat candidate in this year's presidential election. Her chances of winning the tickets from Joe Biden had always looked slim, and she took just 4% of the vote in the party's New Hampshire primary. Dean Phillips, who won nearly 20%, remains in the race against Mr. Biden, who polled nearly 64% in the state. Ms. Williamson told supporters her campaign had not been in vain. I'll appreciate greatly all the incredible people who accompanied me on our political journey over the last 10 months, she said in a Substack. While the personnel of our failure is obvious to all, a level of success is real nonetheless. Processing this experience will itself be an ongoing journey, and forgiveness will guide me as I move through it. I will not allow the mental torment of the woulda, shoulda, couldas to tie me to the past, but rather I keep my eye on the larger story. There are hidden gifts that have only just begun to reveal themselves. Oprah Winfrey's former spiritual advisor had also stood in the 2020 presidential election, focusing on what she saw as the need for spiritual healing in the U.S. after Donald Trump's presidency. Early last year, she countered allegations that she had been verbally and emotionally abusive towards staff during that previous campaign. 5 U.S. Marines are missing after their helicopter went down in the snow-covered California mountains. The CH-53E Super Stallion was found about 45 miles from its destination after the team were reported overdue, but the fate of the 5 Marines traveling on board is unclear. They were on a training flight to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar near San Diego early on Wednesday. The Marine Corps said the troops were on a flight from Las Vegas to Miramar. They are assigned to Marine Heavy Helicopter Squadron 361, part of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. Fire crews were alerted to the missing aircraft at 2:20 local time on Wednesday. Crews were dispatched to an area near Lake Morena, California, before locating the aircraft hours later in Pine Valley in the Cuyamaca Mountains. Rescuers were using ground and aviation assets to locate the aircrew in coordination with San Diego County Sheriff's Department and multiple federal, state, and local agencies, the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing said in a statement. The search efforts have been hindered by heavy snow and wintry conditions in the area, officials said. The incident comes in the wake of a winter storm that has dumped heavy rain on several inches of snow in mountainous areas. First introduced to active service in 1981, the CH-53E Super Stallion is considered a mainstay of Marine Corps aviation and usually serves in a transport role. It can carry up to 37 passengers. In addition to carrying troops, the helicopter, which is also used by the U.S. and Japanese navies, can be used in combat and to transport supplies. The Marine Corps Super Stallion has a checkered safety record. There have been several serious accidents involving the helicopters in recent years. A U.S. official in charge of diplomatic security was arrested on Tuesday for his alleged involvement in the 6 January attacks on the U.S. Capitol. Kelvin Alstrup, who worked for the State Department during the 2021 incident, now faces 4 misdemeanor charges. The charges range from entering and remaining in a restricted building to disorderly and disruptive conduct. The FBI made its arrest using evidence from a search warrant for devices found inside the Capitol during the riot. The State Department did not respond to a request for comment, but told U.S. media it was aware of Mr. Alstrup's arrest and noted that he is no longer employed by the federal agency. He previously served as a third-party contractor providing uniformed officer services for the State Department, a spokesperson said in a statement shared with media outlets. Mr. Alstrup was employed by the United States Department of State as a diplomatic security officer during the attacks, according to an FBI affidavit. Because of his position, Mr. Alstrup would have been familiar with providing security and protection for high-ranking government officials or sensitive locations, the FBI said. American rappers Snoop Dogg and Master P are suing supermarket giant Walmart and a food manufacturing company for sabotaging their cereal brand. A lawsuit filed on Tuesday accuses Walmart and post-consumer brands of hiding boxes of Snoop cereals and incorrectly saying it was out of stock. Lawyer Benjamin Crump called it a blatant disregard of a black-owned business. In statements, both companies point to low sales of the product. Walmart said it has a strong history of supporting entrepreneurs, and many factors affect the sales of any given product. Meanwhile, Post said, "We were equally disappointed that consumer demand did not meet expectations." Snoop Dogg and Master P founded their own food company, Brodux Food, in 2022, according to its website. It produces breakfast cereals, pancake mix, maple syrup, and more. According to the complaint cited by U.S. media, Post tried to choke Brodux Food out of the market because the rappers refused to sell their upstart company to the manufacturer. But they did agree to a partnership whereby Post would produce and distribute the products to major retailers. Mr. Crump, who is one of America's most prominent civil rights lawyers, posted a video online saying they wouldn't put the cereals on the aisles. They kept it in the back of the storeroom. The lawsuit claims that Walmart and Post consumer brands ensure that Snoop cereal would not be available to consumers or that Brodux Foods would incur exorbitant costs that would eliminate any profits. Post essentially worked with Walmart to ensure that none of the boxes of Snoop cereal would ever appear on the store shelves. Master P posted a video on his Instagram page that purports to show a number of Walmart stores not stocking the product. In the footage, unidentified Walmart employees in several stores are asked if they sell the cereal, and when they search the Walmart system, it says products out of stock. They then appear to discover unopened shipments of Snoop cereal in the storeroom. In this statement, Post Consumer Brands also said it had been excited to partner with Brodux Food and said it made substantial investment in the business. Walmart said it would respond as appropriate with the court once it had seen the full complaint. The death of a baby who was decapitated during delivery has been ruled a homicide by a medical examiner office in the U.S. state of Georgia. Parents Jessica Ross and Trevion Taylor sued a hospital that they alleged did not tell them their son was decapitated during birth last year. The medical examiner's office said the cause of the death was a broken neck from human action. According to a statement shared by the couple's attorney, the hospital has denied wrongdoing. Mr. Taylor accused the doctor who delivered the baby and the hospital of lying to them and not allowing them to see their son, whom they named Trevion Taylor Jr. "We just want justice for our son," Mr. Taylor said at a news conference on Wednesday in Atlanta. "They lied to us. They ain't let us touch him. We didn't like it." Mr. Taylor spoke alongside his wife, who was too upset to talk. Ms. Ross went to the Southern Regional Medical Center last July expecting to have a healthy baby, her lawyer Roderick Edmond said at a news conference. But her baby became stuck in the birth canal, most likely because of shoulder dystocia when a baby's shoulder gets stuck behind the pubic bone, according to the family. Mr. Edmonds said typical steps for dealing with the condition include maneuvers and, in an emergency, a cesarean section. Ms. Ross said she asked for one initially but was denied the procedure and forced to push for 3 hours without delivering her baby. Mr. Taylor and Ms. Ross alleged that Dr. Tracy St. Julian, a member of a private practice not employed by the hospital, applied excessive force to the baby in the birth canal to try to pull him out, severing his head. The baby was then delivered through an emergency cesarean section. Ecuador has become the second country in Latin America after Colombia to decriminalize euthanasia. Its constitutional court voted 7-2 in favor of allowing doctors to help a patient die. The court said the crime of homicide would no longer apply to clinicians working to preserve the right to life of a dignified life. The lawsuit was brought by a woman suffering from a neurological disease known as LAS. She had told the court in November that she was experiencing pain, loneliness, and cruelty and wanted to rest in peace. The Roman Catholic Church, to which most Ecuadorians belong, remains staunchly opposed to euthanasia. Colombia decriminalized euthanasia in 1997. LAS suffered Paula Roldan, who is confined to her bed, brought her lawsuit in August, news agency reports. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is the most common form of a motor neuron disease, a rare condition that progressively damages part of the nervous system, leading to muscle weakness, often with visible wasting. Ms. Roldan contested an article of the Penal Code which made euthanasia a crime of homicide, carrying a sentence of between 10 and 13 years in prison. Press says, "I want to rest in peace," she told a court hearing in November via video link. "What I experienced is painful, lonely, and cruel." Court ruled that it would be unreasonable to impose an obligation to stay alive on someone who is going through this situation. Every human being can make free and informed decisions when their personal development is affected, which includes the option of ending the intense suffering caused by a serious and irreversible bodily injury or a serious and incurable illness, it said. After the ruling, Ms. Roldan told reporters that her country had become a little more welcoming, freer, and more dignified. "The fight for human rights is never a paved road," she added. Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister has hailed ties with Big Brother Australia in a historic and closely watched speech in Canberra. James Marape's address to Australia's Parliament, the first bi-Pacific Island leader, comes as Australia and China race for influence in the region. It is also nearly the 50th anniversary of PNG's independence from Australia. "Nothing will come in between our two countries because we are family," Mr. Marape told Australian MPs. In jest, he added that one can choose friends, but one is stuck with family forever, and we have no choice but to get along. Mr. Marape joins an elite list of overseas leaders who have addressed lawmakers in Canberra, including the Chinese President Xi Jinping, former U.S. President Barack Obama, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. PNG is Australia's nearest neighbor. The two nations are separated by just a few kilometers off the sea in the Torres Strait, where the Pacific and Indian Oceans meet. It is the only country that can be seen from Australia's shoreline. A 26-year-old British backpacker has died in a car crash in New Zealand. Joseph Snow, 26, from West Clifton-Sea, Essex, died on his way to Christchurch, New Zealand, after seeing filming shots from Lords of the Ring. His death came after 4 years spent working at the University of Buckingham to fund the once-in-a-lifetime trip. On a fundraising page, Mr. Snow's mother, Elaine, wrote, "He was literally living his dream life before it was taken from him." She said her son was always full of life and loving, caring, intelligent young man who she described as one in a billion. She said he had been in Japan and met his soulmate in the weeks prior to the fatal crash, which involved a single vehicle on the Otira Highway, Jackson's, on 28 January. The 26-year-old had visited the Hobbiton movie set and other sites where Lord of the Rings was filmed. "We had no idea these magical days were to be his final days in New Zealand," his mother wrote. "Nothing can express the pain and despair that is being felt by his family and friends all over the world. More than £9,000 has been pledged to the family to help pay for Mr. Snow's funeral ahead of his deportation to the UK. We are helped by hearing all the wonderful stories and seeing the photos of his many friends around the world are sharing with us," Miss Snow added. One donor wrote, "It was a privilege and an honor to have known Joe. He brought so much happiness to this world," a spokesperson for New Zealand Police said. "Our thoughts are with Mrs. Note's friends and we're now extended family group during this difficult time." And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. From Cameroon, kidnapped local administrator in northwest region regains freedom. From Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu rejects Hamas proposed ceasefire terms. From Pakistan, multiple bomb explosions ahead of elections kill 28 people. From Belgium, US NATO cautions Hungary against delaying Sweden's membership. From United States, official in charge of diplomatic security arrested for capital attacks. From Australia, Papua New Guinea Prime Minister addresses Parliament in Canberra. I am Valentina Lawrence. You can follow us on all our social media platforms: on X, Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram, Atlantic TV Network, or you can watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.